In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free honorable alike in that we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save, or meanly lose, the last best hope of earth. The time comes upon every public man when it is best for him to keep his lips closed. If I were to try to read, much less answer, all the attacks made on me, this shop might as well be closed for any other business. I pass my life in preventing the storm from blowing down the tent, and I drive in the pegs as fast as they are pulled up. When Southern people tell us they are no more responsible for the origin of slavery than we are, I acknowledge the fact. When it is said that the institution exists, and that it is very difficult to get rid of it in any satisfactory way, I can understand and appreciate the same. I hope to stand firm enough to not go backward, and yet not go forward fast enough to wreck the country's cause. The mystic chords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the angels of our nature. In great contests each party claims to act in accordance with the will of God. Both may be, and one must be wrong. The assertion that all men are created equal was of no practical use in effecting our separation from Great Britain, and it was placed in the Declaration not for that, but for future use. Never stir up litigation. A worse man can scarcely be found than one who does this. Let reverence for the laws be breathed by every American mother to the lisping babe that prattles on her lap. Let it be taught in schools, in seminaries, and in colleges. Let it be written in primers, spelling books, and in almanacs. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in legislative halls, and enforced in courts of justice. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the House to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing, or all the other. A capacity and taste for reading gives access to whatever has already been discovered by others. To give victory to the right, not bloody bullets, but peaceful ballots only, are necessary. Someday I shall be president. It is not my nature, when I see a people borne down by the weight of their shackles, the oppression of tyranny, to make their life more bitter by heaping upon them greater burdens, but rather would I do all in my power to raise the yoke, than to add anything that would tend to crush them. If the people of Utah shall peacefully form a state constitution tolerating polygamy, will the democracy admit them into the Union? Don't swap horses in crossing a stream. We can succeed only by concert. It is not, can any of us imagine better, but, can we all do better? I believe it is universally understood and acknowledged that
the point, the power to hurt of all figures, lies in the truthfulness of their application. He who molds the public sentiment makes statutes and decisions possible or impossible to make. I am naturally anti-slavery. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. I cannot remember when I did not so think and feel. I understand a ship to be made for the carrying and preservation of the cargo, and so long as the ship can be saved, with the cargo, it should never be abandoned. This Union likewise should never be abandoned unless it fails, and the possibility of its preservation shall cease to exist, without throwing passengers and cargo overboard. Biographies, as generally written, are not only misleading but false in most instances. They commemorate a lie and cheat posterity out of the truth. You may think it was a very little thing, and in these days it seems to me like a trifle. But it was a most important incident in my life. I could scarcely credit that I, the poor boy, had earned $1 in less than a day, that by honest work, I had earned $1. I was a more hopeful and thoughtful boy from that time. It is a great piece of folly to attempt to make anything out of my early life. No policy that does not rest upon some philosophical public opinion can be permanently maintained. Either the opponents of slavery will arrest the further spread of it, and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is in course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates will push it forward, till it shall become alike lawful in all the states old, as well as new, north as well as south. I have said 100 times, and I have no inclination to take it back, that I believe there is no right, and ought to be no inclination in the people of the free states to enter into the slave states, and to interfere with the question of slavery at all. I have said that always. I learned a great many years ago that in a fight between husband and wife, a third party should never get between the woman's skillet and the man's axe helve.
Repeal the Missouri Compromise, repeal all compromises, repeal the Declaration of Independence, repeal all past history. You still cannot repeal human nature. It will be the abundance of man's heart that slavery extension is wrong, and out of the abundance of his heart, his mouth will continue to speak.
The people will save their government, if the government itself will allow them. If ever I feel the soul within me elevate and expand to those dimensions not wholly unworthy of its almighty architect, it is when I contemplate the cause of my country, deserted by all the world beside, and I standing up boldly and lone, and hurling defiance at our victorious oppressors. Our defense is in the preservation of the spirit which prizes liberty as a heritage of all men, in all lands, everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and you have planted the seeds of despotism around your own doors. There is another old poet whose name I do not now remember who said, "Truth is the daughter of time." 7 years ago our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That I am not a member of any Christian church is true, but I have never denied the truth of the scriptures, and I have never spoken with intentional disrespect of religion in general, or of any denomination. We think the Dred Scott decision is erroneous. We know the court that made it has often overruled its own decisions, and we shall do what we can to have it overrule this. I believe this government cannot endure permanently, half slave and half free. I go for all sharing the privileges of the government, who assist in bearing its burdens. Consequently, I go for admitting all whites to the right of suffrage, who pay taxes or bear arms, by no means excluding females. Republicans are for both the man and the dollar, but in case of conflict the man before the dollar. The people know their rights, and they are never slow to assert and maintain them when they are invaded. He who would be no slave must consent to have no slave. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves and, under a just God, cannot long retain it. I think that slavery is wrong, morally, socially, and politically. I desire that it should be no further spread in these United States, and I should not object if it should gradually terminate in the whole Union. Upon the subject of education, not presuming to dictate any plan or system respecting it, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we, as a people, can be engaged in. If I like a thing, it just sticks after once reading it or hearing it. Illinois surpasses every other spot of equal extent upon the face of the globe in fertility of soil, and in the proportionable amount of the same, which is sufficiently level for actual cultivation. Let the people on both sides keep their self-possession, and just as other clouds have cleared away in due time, so will this, and this great nation shall continue to prosper as before. I hold that while man exists, it is his duty to improve not only his own condition, but to assist in ameliorating mankind. Nothing new here, except my marrying, which to me is a matter of profound wonder. The people themselves, and not their servants, can safely reverse their own deliberate decisions. My father removed from Kentucky to Indiana. In my 8th year it was a wild region, with many bears and other wild animals still in the woods. There I grew up, of course. When I came of age, I did not know much. Still somehow, I could read, write, and cipher, but that was all. In this sad world of ours, sorrow comes to all, and to the young, it comes with bitterest agony because it takes them unawares. I have had experience enough to know what I say. A private soldier has as much right to justice as a major general. That our government should have been maintained in its original form from its establishment until now is not much to be wondered at. It had many props to support it through that period, which now are decayed and crumbled away. Through that period, it was felt by all to be an undecided experiment. Now, it is understood to be a successful one. I desire so to conduct the affairs of this administration, that if at the end I have lost every other friend on earth, I shall at least have one friend left, and that friend shall be down inside of me. In my view of the present aspect of affairs, there is no need of bloodshed and war. There is no necessity for it. I am not in favor of such a course, and I may say in advance, there will be no bloodshed, unless it be forced upon the government. The government will not use force unless force is used against it. Upon the subjects of which I have treated, I have spoken as I have thought. I may be wrong in regard to any or all of them, but holding it a sound maxim that it is better only sometimes to be right than at all times to be wrong. So soon as I discover my opinions to be erroneous, I shall be ready to renounce them. In one end of his house, that he can't stop to put out the fire that is burning me up. I do not think I could myself be brought to support a man for office whom I knew to be an open enemy of, and scoffer at, religion. In so far as the government lands can be disposed of, I am in favor of cutting up the wild lands into parcels, so that every poor man may have a home. My parents were both born in Virginia, of undistinguished families, second families, perhaps I should say. Our Declaration of Independence was held sacred by all and thought to include all, but now, to aid in making the bondage of the Negro universal and eternal, it is assailed, sneered at, construed, hawked at, and torn, till, if its framers could rise from their graves, they could not at all recognize it. Why was the amendment, expressly declaring the right of the people to exclude slavery, voted down? Plainly enough now, the adoption of it would have spoiled the niche for the Dred Scott decision. I have always hated slavery. I think as much as any abolitionist. I have been an old-line Whig. I have always hated it. But I have always been quiet about it until this new era of the introduction of the Nebraska Bill began. I have always been an old-line Henry Clay Whig. The legal right of the Southern people to reclaim their fugitives, I have constantly admitted. The legal right of Congress to interfere with their institution in the states, I have constantly denied. Being elected to Congress, though I am very grateful to our friends for having done it, has not pleased me as much as I expected. It would astonish if not amuse the older citizens to learn that I, a strange, friendless, uneducated, penniless boy, working at $10 per month, have been put down as the candidate of pride, wealth, and aristocratic family distinction. We find ourselves under the government of a system of political institutions, conducing more essentially to the ends of civil and religious liberty than any of which the history of former times tells us. If there should prove to be one real, living free state Democrat in Kansas, I suggest that it might be well to catch him and stuff, and preserve his skin as an interesting specimen of that soon-to-be extinct variety of the genus Democrat. Extemporaneous speaking should be practiced and cultivated. It is the lawyer's avenue to the public. However able and faithful he may be in other respects, people are slow to bring him business if he cannot make a speech. Allow the president to invade a neighboring nation, whenever he shall deem it necessary to repel an invasion, and you allow him to do so, whenever he may choose to say he deems it necessary for such purpose, and you allow him to make war at pleasure. It is with your aid, as the people, that I think we shall be able to preserve not the country, for the country will preserve itself, but the institutions of the country, those institutions which have made us free, intelligent and happy, the most free, the most intelligent, and the happiest people on the globe. By what principle of original right is it that 1/50th or 1/90th of a great nation, by calling themselves a state, have the right to break up and ruin that nation as a matter of original principle? There may sometimes be ungenerous attempts to keep a young man down, and they will succeed too, if he allows his mind to be diverted from its true channel to brood over the attempted injury. I perhaps ought to say that individually I never was much interested in the Texas question. I never could see much good to come of annexation, inasmuch as they were already a free Republican people on our own model. I never went to school more than 6 months in my life, but I can say this, that among my earliest recollections, I remember how, when a mere child, I used to get irritated when anybody talked to me in a way I could not understand. Whatever woman may cast her lot with mine, should any ever do so, it is my intention to do all in my power to make her happy and contented, and there is nothing I can imagine that would make me more unhappy than to fail in the effort. Whether slavery shall go into Nebraska, or other new territories, is not a matter of exclusive concern to the people who may go there. The whole nation is interested that the best use shall be made of these territories. We want them for the homes of free white people. Concede that the new government of Louisiana is only to what it should be, as the egg is to the fowl. We shall sooner have the fowl by hatching the egg, than by smashing it. I was losing interest in politics when the repeal of the Missouri Compromise aroused me again. What I have done since then is pretty well known. If a man had more than one life, I think a little hanging would not hurt this one, but after he is once dead, we cannot bring him back, no matter how sorry we may be, so the boy shall be pardoned. I go to assume a task more difficult than that which devolved upon Washington, unless the great God, who assisted him, shall be with me and aid me. I must fail. But if the same omniscient mind and almighty arm that directed and protected him shall guide and support me, I shall not fail, I shall succeed. For my part, I desire to see the time when education and by its means, morality, sobriety, enterprise and industry, shall become much more general than at present, and should be gratified to have it in my power to contribute something to the advancement of any measure, which might have a tendency to accelerate the happy period. I should like to know if taking this old Declaration of Independence, which declares that all men are equal upon principle, you begin making exceptions to it, where will you stop? If one man says it does not mean a Negro, why not another say it does not mean some other man? Oh, yes, you Virginians shed barrels of perspiration while standing off at a distance, and superintending the work your slaves do for you. It is different with us. Here it is every fellow for himself, or he doesn't get there. It was that which gave promise that in due time the weights should be lifted from the shoulders of all men, and that all should have an equal chance. This is the sentiment embodied in that Declaration of Independence. Among the friends of union, there is great diversity of sentiment and of policy in regard to slavery and the African race among us. The man who could go to Africa and rob her of her children, and then sell them into interminable bondage, with no other motive than that which is furnished by dollars and cents, is so much worse than the most depraved murderer, that he can never receive pardon at my hand. To the best of my judgment, I have labored for, and not against, the Union, as I have not felt. So I have not expressed any harsh sentiment towards our Southern brethren. I have constantly declared, as I really believed, the only difference between them and us is the difference of circumstances. I perhaps ought to say that individually I never was much interested in the Texas question. I never could see much good to come of annexation, inasmuch as they were already a free Republican people on our own model.